Okay, let's try this question here. They tell us a whole bunch of things here about the lines being produced and this and that, but the key part of what they say is that ABCD is a parallelogram. We know though AB is equal to DC because of the opposite sides of a parallelogram. We know that they're parallel, that they must be parallel, and AD is parallel to BC and all the other properties of a parallelogram. The other important thing they tell us is that AE is equal to FC. But they want us to prove that DJ, this big line here, is parallel to BK. Well, first, there's probably way more than one way to do this, but let's look at the way they did it here. They said, we know that AB is equal to DC. It's a parallelogram. But that means that AE plus EB must equal DF plus FC, because that's just describing exactly the same thing. And what's given that AE is equal to FC. Well, if AE is equal to FC, we could subtract it from both sides, and EB is equal to DF. So EB is equal to DF. But hey, we also know that these two lines are parallel. So then we can say that EDFB is a parallelogram because we've got a pair of opposite sides that are parallel and equal. And that's it. Okay, now we know this is a parallelogram. But they wanted us to prove that BK is parallel to DJ. But we know that ED is parallel to BF because it's a parallelogram. And we know that in these things they're produced, so they're on the same line. So that's why DJ must be parallel to BK, because this forms a straight line. And there you go. What about E1? E1, right up here, here's E1. We're supposed to prove that it equals F1 down here. How are we going to do that? Well, I can see E1 and D1 are parallel because of corresponding angles. And then I can see these are parallel lines. We proved it in the last thing. D1 and F1 are equal. Well, if E1 and F1 both equal D1, then E1 has to equal F1. And that's called the transitive property. But in this country, we don't have to say that. We just used the transitive property here. When two things equal the same thing, they must be equal to each other. And there we go for the last question, which is pretty challenging.